Hello, welcome back to another lecture on Wuthering Heights in the course of Gothic novel. And I hope you've been following up this course, and this is maybe number 5 or 6 chapter or lecture, I'm not sure, in this course on the Gothic novel. And here we are having some analytical viewpoint on the chapters of this novel one by one. And today we are going to talk about chapters number 8, 9, 10, and 11. Of course, I'm not going to explain those chapters in detail, but I'm going to shed some light to highlight some important points in these chapters. Let's move on. As I told you, as I promised you in the previous lecture, that in each lecture I'm going to present this family tree of the characters in this novel in order to have a better understanding of the relationship between these characters and who was Heathcliff and how he was connected to this family, who was Catherine, who was Hindley, and so on. So this family tree explains so much. So please, whenever you are lost in names, whenever you are lost in characters, you just come back to this page, to this part of the lecture, and just remind yourself of the characters here we have. Let's move on. And again, supposedly, you are reading the text itself. As I told you, it is really important. It is of great importance to read the text itself, because reading the text is like eating the food. It is like eating your main dish, while having this summary, these pamphlets, handouts. It's like just taking food supplements. It is of no use. It doesn't give you the complete comprehensive picture of what is going on in the novel. So please, before moving on, just pause this lecture, go and read chapter 8, 9, 10, 11, and come back here, because it is of no use to study any novel without reading the original text, the text itself. So let's just make a summary of what is going on in chapter 8. Let's read these texts. During the following summer, Frances gives birth to Harrison, but Frances dies a week later because she had been suffering from consumption. Nellie is expected to take complete control of the newborn. Hindley is distraught over the death of his wife and becomes tyrannical, forcing all the servants but Nellie and Joseph away. He also begins to treat Heathcliff more cruelly, and Heathcliff delights in Hindley's downfall. Catherine begins to adopt a double character, behaving one way with Heathcliff and another with the Lintons. Heathcliff begins keeping track of how much time she is spending with Edgar and the Lintons, and he is angry that Catherine belittles him when he confronts her with this. Edgar arrives at the end of the argument. Nellie keeps herself in the room with Catherine during Edgar's visit, and this annoys Catherine greatly. Unable to convince Nellie to leave, Catherine ends up pinching Nellie and then lies about it. Edgar tries to intervene, and Catherine boxes his ears. This is the first time he has been the wild side of Catherine, and he tells her that he must leave. However, on the way out, he sees Catherine through the window and returns. Later, Nellie interrupts the sweethearts to inform them that Mr. Earnshaw has returned home drunk again. So this here we have another conflict, another debate, another crisis in the relationship between the family members, between these friends. And let's have a look at this chapter from this analytical point. The civilized characters in the novel are often weak or sickly. Hindley's grief is excessive, which at the time was a trait associated with women. Meanwhile, Heathcliff's own desire for revenge has made him almost cold-blooded. He feels no sympathy for Hindley's loss and actually delights in his pain. So, if you remember, just go back to the introduction of the course. The lecture on the revolutionary side of Gothic fiction. We said that Gothic fiction was like a revolution against patriarchal civilization, against the male civilization, the male society. That's why here again, the civilized people here in this novel, like Hindley, like Edgar, and other people, other characters, they are civilized and they are almost presented as weak or sickly people. They do not have that power to face their problems. Against this is another way for Gothic fiction, for Gothic novel to criticize this patriarchal civilization, and it is of course clear the weakness of these characters, of the society, of the patriarchal society. The second point here is Catherine now bridges the gap between civilization and nature, but it isn't possible to span this gap for long without causing some sort of conflict. And Catherine chooses civilization and class over her natural connection to Heathcliff. Edgar's arrival without Isabella signals that there is a romance between him and Catherine. Again, Catherine here, she is in a dilemma. She is in a crossway. She doesn't know what to choose, who to choose. She is torn among Edgar, who represents civilization, rationality, the society, the higher class, the sophisticated, the educated class of the society, while Heathcliff represents that irrational, natural, Gothic side of the world, of the society. That's why she is torn. She knows that the true choice would be Heathcliff, but what the society expects from Catherine is only to choose Edgar. That's why she is forced, she is obliged to choose Edgar over Heathcliff, because she is forced by the society, by what the society expects, by her superego. Like exactly according to Freud, Heathcliff represents the id of the people, the id of Catherine, that part of freedom, of emancipation, of joy, of pleasure, of what we like to do in our life. While Edgar represents the superego of Catherine. He represents that type of the social relationships, social values and morals that she should stick to, she should oblige to, abide to. Sorry. That's why, of course, that is so reasonable in the 19th century, in the 18th century, that someone needs to choose superego over it. One is obliged to choose rationality over irrationality. That was the way, the norms of the society at that time. Let's move on to the second point. Yet, it becomes clear right away that the civilized Edgar can't possibly stand up to the Catherine's fierce natural passions. In fact, when they are together, it is Catherine who takes on the stereotypical male role of power, and Edgar who accepts the more stereotypical passive role of a woman. Again, here in this point here we have another criticism of males at the society, as they are presented so weak, they are indecisive, they cannot choose for themselves, they are lost in their dreams and in their indecisiveness. That's why this is another way the Gothic novel criticizes the male, the patriarchal society. The last point here is, it is interesting that Edgar must make his declarations of love quietly, in private. It's hard to imagine Heathcliff doing the same. Again, here we have the contrast between Heathcliff and Edgar, and how they are different in traits, in characteristics, how the wild nature which is presented in Heathcliff is free to express its ideas. We see the nature, the Gothic ideas, the Gothic philosophy it is so emancipated. It has that freedom to express its ideas. While Edgar, the civilization, the rationality, he is so hesitant. He doesn't have the courage to express his love and ideas. Again, this is another criticism of the civilization, of the patriarchal society. Let's move on to chapter 9 and the summary. This odd, almost grotesque scene adds to the gothic menace of the novel. The heaven of Catherine's dream is a pleasant, civilized place, but her dream implies that though she finds those things attractive, she'll never escape the wild, passionate part of her nature that is symbolized by Wuthering Heights and which loves Heathcliff. Of course, we are here talking about the dream of Catherine, the dream that she was like in a heaven. She has been enjoying that place, but she didn't feel home. It was like the uncanny. That heaven was an uncanny to Catherine. Hindley's revenge is a success. Even Catherine is affected by Heathcliff's fall to a lower class. Yet, Catherine is at the same time so passionate about Heathcliff that she can't see how anything can come between them. She's wrong. She doesn't understand that nature won't be chained or denigrated. Another storm and more passionate plot points. Note that fever is like a physical manifestation of wild passion. The civilized Lintons try to cure Catherine's fever, but instead they are killed by it. The 3-year wait before Edgar and Catherine marry indicates Catherine's continued attachment to Heathcliff. Of course, here we see that Catherine is in conflict, in psychological inner conflict with herself, in what to choose Heathcliff or Edgar. And of course, at the end of the course, I will present a analytical theory proposed by Freud and Lacan, which expresses this dilemma, this indecisiveness by Catherine. So please follow up to the end, of course. As for the analytical points of chapter 9, the civilized characters in the novel are often weak or sickly. Hindley's grief is excessive, which at the same time was a trait associated with women. Sorry, here there is a repetition of the previous slide. And of course, we see the continuation of the previous events in the plot. So there is nothing really new to point out here. Let's move on to chapter 10. Let's talk about the summary. Heathcliff reappears suddenly one September afternoon, approximately 6 months after Catherine and Edgar marry. Nellie does not tell Catherine who the visitor is, but she does tell Edgar. Edgar suggests that Catherine visit in the kitchen, but she insists on entertaining in the parlor. Catherine's excitement over Heathcliff's return was not the reception he expected, but he is pleased to receive it. Their words and actions reveal that Catherine and Heathcliff love each other. Heathcliff surprises everyone by stating that he is staying at Wuthering Heights. Catherine and Isabella often visit the Heights, and Heathcliff visits the Grange. During these visits, Isabella becomes infatuated with Heathcliff. He is not interested in the young lady, but he is interested in the fact that she is her brother's heir. Nellie is concerned about Heathcliff's return, vowing to watch for any signs of impropriety. Here we have some interesting events. We have the return of Heathcliff, which signals the beginning of a new crisis in the events. So let's go to the analysis of this chapter. As a man who earned his money, Heathcliff would be looked down upon by the old money upper class who inherited their wealth. So again, here we have classism. We have the differences between the classes, between Heathcliff and Hindley, and how they treat each other, how they deal, and how they maintain their relationship with each other. We have this horrific classism in that society, the conflict between the higher class and the lower class. it is really clear and obvious in the plot and events of this story. Catherine's willfulness and Edgar's passive love means that Catherine takes on the dominant role at the Grange. Again, here we have the continuation of the criticism of the civilization, of patriarchal civilization, of male society, and how they are weak, in fact, and how females possess the real power in the world, according to this Gothic fiction, according to Gothic norm and traditions. So again, here we have that criticism, social criticism. Catherine's love for Heathcliff is immediately apparent. Edgar tries to denigrate Heathcliff by receiving him in the kitchen, which is where one would meet with people of a lower class. Again, out of his jealousy, Edgar wants to welcome and to meet Heathcliff in the kitchen, which is a place of meeting with the lower class people, but Catherine insists to meet Heathcliff in the main hall of the house. Heathcliff has escaped the lower class roughness imposed on him by Hindley, but retains his wild nature. Again, here we have the victory of nature over civilization, the victory of Gothic norms and tradition over the society, over the male patriarchal society. Though it might take some time, but finally the Gothic females and that muted, excluded, detached world of Gothic is always victorious. And Heathcliff is a man of grand, reckless, wild actions, such as revenge and suicide. Edgar is a civilized man of comfort, and when Heathcliff's wildness makes him uncomfortable, he tries to impose civilization through the ritual of having tea. Heathcliff, staying at the Heights, reminds the reader of his promise to revenge on Hindley. Again, here we have another clear point and characteristic of Gothic fiction, which is revenge. Revenge is dominating the scene here. Revenge is hovering above the characters, their minds, their attitudes, their relationship with each other. We see the theme of revenge is flying, is holding the scene, is suffocating the characters. So, revenge is everywhere in this novel. It begins to be clear that Heathcliff plans to use his wealth to exact revenge on Hindley. This revenge also reflects the more general class struggle of the time, as the new money class was able to buy its way into high society by preying on the debts of the old money class. Again, here we have the continuation of the theme of revenge. We have this classism, how Heathcliff wants to take revenge by dominating the wealth and money of Hindley, and finally, of course, he succeeds. We will see in the coming chapters. When Catherine describes Heathcliff as a friend, she might better call him a force of nature. He has no remorse and is relentless. And Catherine knows that someone as civilized and gentle as Isabella will be broken by him. Again, Catherine, because of her Gothic nature inside her, because of her natural attitudes in herself, she is so romantically and emotionally attached to Heathcliff, because Heathcliff represents the ultimate ambitions of Catherine, the point to which she wants to arrive, to reach at. That's why she is emotionally attached to Heathcliff, and she knows that anybody else who desires to get attached to Heathcliff will lose, will be lost, will be broken, like Isabella. And the last point here is Heathcliff wants to use Isabella to take revenge on Edgar. He plans to use the rules that normally keep the classes separate, inheritance, to steal the Grange from the Lintons. So Heathcliff wants to take revenge from everybody in this novel, in Thrushcross Grange and in Wuthering Heights. He wants to take revenge from Edgar, who has stolen his beloved Catherine by marrying Isabella only to inherit his wealth after he dies. That's why we have even the romance here, it is built upon revenge, upon despise, upon hatred, upon Gothic norms. And chapter 11, Nellie ventures back to Wuthering Heights to talk with Hindley. Instead, she encounters Harriton, who has no memory of her. Harriton greets her with a barrage of stones and curses, actions he learned from Heathcliff. When Heathcliff appears, Nellie runs away. The next day, at the Grange, Nellie witnesses an embrace between Heathcliff and Isabella. When Catherine confronts Heathcliff about this, she tells her, "I'm not your husband. You needn't be jealous of me." This leads Heathcliff to reveal that he knows Catherine has wronged him and that he will be revenged. Edgar confronts both Catherine and Heathcliff. Catherine ends up locking the door and taunting her husband into a fair fight between Heathcliff and himself. Edgar ends up hitting Heathcliff in the throat and rushes off to get assistance. Realizing he cannot fight three men with weapons, Heathcliff leaves. Edgar then demands that Catherine chooses between Heathcliff and himself. Catherine doesn't answer. Instead, she locks herself in her room, refusing to eat for 2 days. Unable to get through to Catherine, Edgar informs Isabella that if she were to pursue a relationship with Heathcliff, that action would signify the end of the relationship. So again, we have the acceleration, the rising up of crisis among characters. Here we have the disintegration of the marriage of Edgar and Catherine. Let's see what's going on here. Heathcliff's revenge on Hindley includes doing to Harriton what Hindley did to him. As a result, Harriton has become a kind of mirror image of Heathcliff as a boy, a wild child, too ignorant even to know what has been taken from him. Again, here we have another Gothic tradition here. It's so clear. We have the inheritance of previous grudges, of previous secrets, of previous revenge to the coming generation, to the next generation. We have the continuation of this line of hatred, of despise, from fathers to son, from one generation to another. So here we have the continuation of the secrets of the family. Heathcliff, as a natural man, is concerned with what is right or wrong, not with how things appear. But once wrong, he becomes completely consumed by the need for revenge, and is willing to trample or hurt anyone, perhaps with the exception of Catherine, to get it. Again, here we have the insistence of Heathcliff overtaking revenge. He believes he has been wronged and he came back to return. He is the uncanny of Wuthering Heights. He is the uncanny of Thrushcross Grange, who threatens, who violates the entire story, the entire characters. We will talk in more detail in the coming lectures. The passionate Catherine wants the civilized Edgar to be more mature. She wants him to be more like the wild and passionate Heathcliff. Edgar's attempt to comply after she forces him into it is pitiful. Again, Catherine, she rediscovers her own inner nature when she confronts Heathcliff. She comes to realize her true nature and how she is different from Edgar. She asked Edgar to become as natural, as Gothic as Heathcliff, which of course Edgar fails. This is of course an implication, a reference to the failure of the male patriarchal society to adapt to the true nature, to the Gothic nature, and to its weakness. And finally, like Heathcliff, Catherine is prone to wild, reckless actions that the civilized Edgar can't. Note also how Edgar treats Isabella for following her heart when he did the same when he married Catherine. Again, here we have this conflict between nature and civilization. Of course, we have the victory of nature over civilization. These were the most important points. Of course, you may add dozens of other Gothic analytical points here to these 4 chapters. It's up to you, and I will be glad to hear your ideas or your comments. So please stay tuned and follow up for the coming lectures. Thank you very much. Bye bye.